To respond in part to Dr Graham's comments, particularly around the question of how the national interest analysis discusses the missing 0.5%. And I appreciate the Minister's explanation around those issues and indeed understand the point, particularly around the question of alcohol. Not sure we could quite make the same point around firearms and tobacco, but I do actually want to endorse Dr Graham's comment about the way in which the national interest analysis raises this matter. And I do think it's something for future thought, that the language and the phrasing in here doesn't pick up the spirit of the Minister's comments and indeed of others in the House about our respect for other cultures and our belief that, and I was perhaps diplomatic in my language earlier, but our belief that we don't need to do this. We do need to respect and understand other countries and the limitations of these free trade agreements. And I do think some of the language in the national interest analysis on this perhaps left a little to be desired. The second point that Dr Graham raised that I would want to respond to is around the importance of the environmental cooperation agreements and the actual discussions that take place as a result of them. And one that I know a little about was with Chile, with the P3 now morphing its way to being the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And I know there was significant work done, a number of meetings, particularly in the ecotourism area, and a lot of information shared about how to grow that sector, but also how to ensure that the effects of tourism are mitigated on the environment. And there was significant exchange. The Ministry for the Environment in New Zealand was actually the lead agency, but they brought in a number of ecotourism operators who were able to share their experience, and equally from the Chilean side. And in fact, talking to a number of the ecotourism operators who were involved in that, they felt they learned as much from the Chileans as went the other way. And I think that is the advantage of these agreements. But that brings me to the point that I want to raise to build on Marion Street's comments about the environmental cooperation agreements. These agreements, I have to say, were seen, as I said in my second reading speech, as somewhat of tack-ons. And I think it's important that in this House we make clear that the expectation of parliamentarians is that these are much more than that they are treaty-level agreements that are of significance to us. They round out our relationship with these countries so that it is not just about free trade and tariffs. It is actually about building a stronger and deeper relationship, and that environmental cooperation will have leveraging possibilities for services, but it's more than that as well. It's in fact a sign of our values, and that's why the Labour Cooperation Agreement is significant and important as well. And there are obligations in here to set up committees and to have those committees meet. And I would like to implore the government to continue to see these as important parts of free trade negotiations. It is true that a number of other countries were reluctant to have these in the early years of this century, but New Zealand has pushed on, and as Marion Street said, we have in fact led the way in these agreements. We're the ones who've said, no, these must be part of our free trade agreements, and I think we now need to back that up with further action and ensure that they are meaningful. I don't believe, Dr Graham, that they're a sign that the Green Party should recommence Morris dancing. In fact, there's nothing that should encourage the Green Party to recommence Morris dancing, but it is a sign that there is an understanding of the importance of environmental cooperation, the importance of labour cooperation, and the fact that, as Marion Street said, we're referencing International Labour Organisation agreements, we're referencing the outcomes of the Rio Earth Summit. That is important. It gives great stability to those agreements to have the international agreements alongside. So I think it is important to note that the environmental cooperation agreements and labour cooperation agreements are rising in their importance. Their status has been increased by being at a treaty level, and they are now a very important part of free trade agreements.
Kennedy Graham.